The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a story of dispossession, displacement and violence stretching back over a century. Understanding Gaza's current situation requires a journey back to the British Mandate for Palestine and the creation of Israel in 1948, just like that, as if nobody was there, which was called a Nakba, or catastrophe. In 1967, Israel occupied the strips after scaring off 750,000 and killing around 15,000 in order to take the land by force. Israel controls Gaza's airspace and coastal waters, and now their food, a blockade that has turned the strip into a prison box trap. The rise of Hamas in the early 21st century added another layer of complexity to the conflict. As they continue to fight, with thousands dead, the mindset of a Palestinian is as if someone walked in your backyard. In 2006, they became a terrorist organization. Is Mexico considered a terrorist for coming in? On October 7th, 23, with a strong border, somehow Hamas launched a surprise attack on Israel, killing 1,000 Israelis and taking hostages. Was it an inside job? For a chance to respond with a military offensive of unprecedented scale, transforming Gaza into a scene of unimaginable devastation. Israel's actions in Gaza since October 2023 have drawn widespread condemnation and accusations of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and even genocide. Human rights organizations have documented systematic violations of international law by Israeli forces. These include indiscriminate attacks on civilian areas, targeting of hospitals and shelters, and the use of disproportionate force. According to the UN, over 40,000 Palestinians, including children, have been killed. The true death toll is likely higher. Were they all being used as human shield? The International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for Israeli officials, charging them with war crimes. Israel, which does not recognize the ICC's jurisdiction, has vowed to protect its citizens. Legal experts argue that Israel's actions, particularly the siege of northern Gaza, constitute a deliberate attempt to destroy the Palestinian people. The systematic targeting of civilian infrastructure and denial of aid point to a genocidal intent. Gaza has been transformed into a wasteland of rubble, a way for Israel to take over when there is no home to return to. The United Nations estimates that over 80% of buildings in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed, leaving hundreds of thousands homeless. Hospitals, which should be sanctuaries in times of war, have been repeatedly bombed, leaving them without essential medical care. Schools have been targeted, robbing children of their education and future. The siege of northern Gaza, which began in October 2023, has exacerbated the humanitarian crisis. Israel's goal was to starve Hamas fighters and force them to surrender. Or was it to impact the population in order to move out like the 750,000? The UN has warned of a humanitarian catastrophe, with millions facing acute shortages of essential goods and services. The health system, already on the brink of collapse, is struggling to cope with the influx of wounded and sick. The world responds, international condemnation and calls for justice. Celebrities speaks out against a foreign country without fear of losing their role. Governments and organizations demand a ceasefire and accountability. The UN voted to investigate violations of humanitarian law. The ICC launched an investigation into alleged war crimes. Decision was welcomed by human rights groups but condemned by Israel. Political officials bows down to Israel, and the question is, why? The US authorized the release of 2,000-pound bombs to Israel and aid also. America is on debt and still money being sent overseas from taxpayers' money in order to support other agendas. After destroying Gaza, they plan to rebuild Gaza in order to occupy like the West Bank. If Israel owes Gaza money, will they rebuild from it? America, listen carefully, Palestinians are not Egyptians, Palestinians are not Jordanians, Egyptians are not Jordanians, USA is not Israel, Why is American-Israel Public Affairs Committee associating with our elections? Can the Congress of Russian Americans, the National Committee on United States-China Relations, the Arab American Institute advocate our elections, or is that interference? And of course, let's not talk about Ukraine. Is the whole purpose for US support is to weaken the enemy, which has been proven Russia stays strong? Yes, it's very difficult to believe that the year 2025 and this is happening. Subscribe and stay tuned.